Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian. I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here in Western Canada, located on the southern tip of Vancouver Island, not to be confused with the city of Vancouver, which is on the mainland. I hope that all of you are having a superb weekend so far. Yes, start to your weekend. I hope you all had a good week. And I hope that you're all ready for this class. We are looking at IELTS Task 1 writing, focusing on some pie charts. The topic of the pie charts will be on spending, money, very common. Welcome, Carolina, our chat moderator, helping us keep it clean, keeping it together. If anybody has questions, Carolina is a good person to ask. Fuang Yani Chen, good to see you in this class. Being studious as you are will yield sweet fruits and you will succeed. This is a subscribers chat class. To join the chat, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is a great idea so that you get notifications of our upcoming classes, our newest releases. We post sample task 2 essays in our community board and lots more. So for IELTS students, this is the channel to be. This is the channel to subscribe and follow. We are here to help you pass, help you reach your goals. We use our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gltshelp.com for general IELTS to achieve these goals. Chanello, good to see you in the class. All right, students, we will begin our task 1 shortly. This is our academic IELTS website here with the blue background. Simply click that big red button that's above my head there to join the premium package. A couple of clever people did that after the last class that we just had, and that's awesome. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. We are IDP affiliates, British Council partners. We're an official IELTS test registration center. I'm a certified British Council agent. You are in great hands with us. General IELTS, gltshelp.com, green background. It's this red button here. Click it, join it, enjoy it, learn from it. For the payment checkout, little bit of extra help for you. Click use coupon code and enter the code STUDY9 for another 10% discount. Doesn't cost a lot. Our goal is to help as many students as we can. So go there and use it. Students, apps, yes, of course, we have them. The apps link to the websites, Academic IELTS Help app or General IELTS Help app from your app stores. We'll link to the websites. Instagram, IELTS_AE help for academic, GIELTS help for general. On Instagram, we post vocabulary, some fun videos with strategies, tips for the exam. Check that out. And if you still have questions, if you're not sure, you're wondering about English, IELTS, send me an email. Adrian@aehelp.com or admin@aehelp.com. I will gladly respond to your questions. Students, tomorrow we will have speaking part 2 for members, and we will have speaking part 3 for everybody. So look forward to those classes tomorrow. And on Sunday, we have a light haul class, which is video, audio, chat, real time, full speaking for free. The link is here. Join that light haul class. Those are really fun classes. Students really enjoy them. And keep in mind, students, that starting from next week, so after November 6th, daylight savings here in the US and in Canada, many European countries. So the clocks move backwards an hour for us. In the springtime, they move forwards, but in the fall, they move backwards. That means that the classes will be 1 hour later next week. So we'll send out some more notifications for that. Please keep that in mind. Really important, just so you know what's going on. Always new releases on our channel. We've got a new release for you here. It's a very good one to practice your IELTS speaking. We will have a new release for you within the next 24 hours, a really awesome speaking interview example. So check that out. All right, let's get into IELTS Task 1 writing. Okay. Mehdi says, just to mention the building's picture blocking the screen. I don't know what building's picture you're talking about. I'm not sure. My screen looks good. If anybody has an issue with the screen, let me know. All right. I'm looking at the chat, students. I'm constantly looking at the chat to see what you are saying, what you are writing. Okay. So IELTS Task 1 writing. So writing section, it's 1 hour, 20 minutes for Task 1, 40 minutes for Task 2. Do them in this order, okay? So sometimes students ask me, should I do Task 2 first? It's longer, it's worth more. No, do Task 1 first. It's a warm-up, okay? It should be easier. It should be nice and smooth. Don't spend more than 20 minutes on it. So spend only 20 minutes on Task 1, but do it first. Because that will help you to write better for Task 2, hopefully, and then your overall mark will be better. If you write for Task 2 first and you make a lot of mistakes, not a good strategy, okay? So stay with Task 1 first. That's why IELTS gives you Task 1 as Task 1 and not as Task 2. So stay with the logic of IELTS here. And spend 20 minutes on the task. Don't spend any more than that. And, you know, sometimes students are like, well, what should I do in that 20 minutes? So in that 20 minutes, students, just so you have some clarity, okay? So 2 minutes planning, 15 minutes writing. In that 15 minutes, you shouldn't just write 250 words. You should write 295 words. 250 to 300 words should be your goal. Okay, and if you write nice and fluently, that should be no problem. Make sure that you know how to touch type if you're doing the computer-based exam, okay? So, sorry, 200, no, I erased that, forget that. So you should write 150 to 220 words, okay? 300 words is way too much for Task 1. Had Task 2 in my head there. Okay, so let me revise that, okay? So 2 minutes for planning, 15 minutes for writing, 150 to 220 words for Task 1, okay? And then 3 minutes reviewing. After you write each paragraph. Because it's 3 paragraphs, okay? So you're completing 3 paragraphs, right? So let me just reiterate, okay? So 20 minutes, okay? In that 20-minute time, 2 minutes planning, 15 minutes writing. You should write 150 to 220 words, 3 minutes review time. That means you spend about 30 seconds on reviewing your introduction, 30 seconds in reviewing your overview, and then about 2 minutes to review your body paragraph, your analysis. Okay? All right. Good. You guys are paying attention. Chen says, I was surprised about the 300 words. You should be. You shouldn't write 300 words. It's too much. Okay? All right. So 2 minutes for the planning. That means you read the question. Let's do that right now. The following charts show the spending on various needs in 2 different countries. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so here we have 2 countries, Japan and Malaysia. And we have 2 pie charts. Good. So we look at these. We don't have to get into a lot of detailed analysis. We'll do that after. We just need to get into it and we need to start writing, okay? So nice and smooth. Here we go. So for the first step is the introduction, okay? So as I said up here, it's 3 paragraphs, okay? So 3 paragraphs. So task 1, academic, is usually 3 paragraphs. It's an introduction plus an overview plus a body paragraph, which is basically analyses. Analyses, plural, yes. Right? So that's what you do. What is the introduction? The introduction, you simply paraphrase the question with more detail. Okay? So let me show you what I mean by that. So here's the original question, okay? And we put that there. So it says the following charts show. Okay, well, instead of saying the following charts. Now, everybody, we're doing this together, okay? So this is for all of our viewers and especially for all of our subscribers and members who are in the chat. I want you to write because I'm going to take some of your sentences and I will give you feedback. I will let you know your band score. So write with me. Don't just watch me. Don't just listen to me. The beauty of these live classes is that we can interact, right? So interactivity is key. Otherwise, it could just be a recorded class. So here, I'm going to paraphrase and give more details. So it says the following charts show these 2 pie charts depict. Okay. I don't just say charts, I say pie charts. I don't just say charts, I say 2 pie charts, right? So giving more detail. Okay. Akashdeep, if you say this chart depicts the information, you're just repeating what's already in the question. You won't get very high band scores for that. Rishi, welcome to our members. That's awesome. So these pie charts depict the percentage of money spent on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different categories of needs, right? So again, I'm adding numbers, I'm adding details. So these 2 pie charts depict the percentage of money spent on 5 different categories of, instead of needs, I can write necessities. Necessities. And then here we have in 2 different countries in the question. Well, I can paraphrase that with more detail because I know now by looking at the pie charts that it's Japan and Malaysia, right? So I can write that. Necessities in Japan and Malaysia. Right? There we go. So that's the more specific, more detailed information for this introduction. Now, if I have a couple of really simple pie charts like this, I might actually include the 5 different categories. So just to give it a bit more content, categories including housing. We can capitalize because they're the names of the categories. Transport, food, healthcare. We'll keep it 2 words. And other goods and services. Okay. So now I spend that 30 seconds to review my introductory paragraph. Okay, you don't need to write this. This is just for your information. This is the introduction. Okay, So these two pie charts depict the percentage of money spent on 5 different categories of necessities, including housing, transport, food, healthcare, and other goods and services in Japan and Malaysia. All right, great. Let's see what Jaspinder has for his introduction. Jaspinder writes, these two pie charts illustrate the proportion of money spent on, Jaspinder, on housing. You spend money on something. On housing, transport, food, healthcare, and others. Don't forget that category. In Japan and Malaysia. Jaspinder, good. Just a couple of small corrections there. That's about a band 7 without the corrections. It's good. Okay. Daisy Lee writes, the pie charts indicate the information about spending on 5 different categories in 2 different countries, namely Japan and Malaysia. Daisy, it's good. Let's capitalize that first letter always, okay? So students, whenever you practice, do pay attention to punctuation and capitalization. It's very important that you learn that accurately, okay? So the pie charts, let's add a bit more detail here, the 2 pie charts. Let's tell our reader what we're looking at. Here's an important note, okay? This is a super important tip. Super tip. We'll call it a super tip. I wish I could do like little sound. I'm going to get like a sound effect machine and then give you guys sound effects for these. Would you like some sound effects? Like super tip would be like super tip. So we'll get some sound effects in the future for these fun facts and super tips. So super tip, okay? It is a super tip. Ideally, a band 8 to 9 essay, task 1, should have enough clarity that the reader can easily picture the graphs and information without needing to see it. Okay? So that's the idea. If you're wondering, right, like how good is my task 1 essay? What you can do, right? So if you're thinking this, like how good is my task 1 essay? Then here's a good test. You can test it. Okay, you can test that question. Okay, so the answer to that is give your essay to a friend or parent, sibling, and ask them to draw the chart that you are writing about. Okay? If it kind of looks like the chart, and then you did great. But if it looks like the blueprint for a new swimming pool, then you probably need to rewrite. Unless, of course, task 1 is about a diagram that's a blueprint for a swimming pool, in which case you would do a great job. But if not, and they draw you something completely different, right? Like you write about 2 pie charts, you give it to your friend, and then your friend ends up going, yeah, I think it looks something like this, what you're writing about. And you're like, I was writing about pie charts. Right? Maybe you didn't have the word pie chart in your essay. So be careful about that, right? But it's a great test. It's a very good test to see how well you're doing, right? Is give your essay to a friend, family member, ask them, say, can you draw the graph that you think I'm writing about? And then if they draw you 2 pie charts that look roughly like the charts that you're talking about, then that was a good essay. All right. Does that make sense, everybody? That could be a fun little exercise, right? How well am I writing? How much can my reader understand without actually looking at these charts? Okay. Band 8, Band 9, they can recreate the charts from your essay. Sukhpreet says, yes, I got that. Fong says, yes, I got that. Okay. That's the idea of good analysis, because your goal in task 1 is to interpret the essay. Okay. All right, cool. So Band 8, Band 9, they should be able to recreate it. Okay. So that's why what I was saying there, Daisy, is you want to say 2 pie charts. So immediately your reader knows that it's 2 pie charts. It's not 3, it's not 4, it's not 6, it's 2. Okay. All right, so Daisy, the 2 pie charts indicate the information about spending on 5 different categories in 2 different countries, namely Japan and Malaysia. Sure. All right, good. Let's go on to the overview. Okay. Good. I'm happy a lot of people understood that last point and exercise. Overview. The overview is simply the main observable features of the graph without going into details, okay? The main observable features of the graph or graphs without a lot of detail that set the structure for the body paragraph. So it's kind of like your thesis. Okay. Oh. So that's what your overview has to be. Let me show you this. And again, I want you to write with me. Okay, so this is interactive, and I will be doing this with you. Okay, so this is interactive. All right, so we're looking at the main features. All right. So here we have Japan and Malaysia. Nice. All right, there we go. Okay, what's the most observable feature in these pie charts? What do we notice right away? So what's observable? Prajapati says housing is increasing rapidly. We don't see any increasing or decreasing here. There's no increase or decrease. That would be a line graph, and we don't even have time here. So there's definitely no increase or decrease. Mamgakia, I have no idea. You have to contact YouTube about that, okay? Ladies and gents, you can't say stays the same or increasing. If you do that, you're going to get a very low band score, like 4 or 5. There is no increase or decrease here. We're simply comparing 2 countries, Japan and Malaysia. There is no change over time. Okay? So let me go up a little bit more here so that you can see the categories. Okay, there. Now you'll be able to see it a little bit clearer. So remember that this one here is Japan. And this one here is Malaysia. Okay. And now you can see all 5 of the categories. All right, so we're just doing a comparison here. With these pie charts, you're not seeing any increase or decrease. Yep, there's the categories. Okay. So Karina says Malaysia spent a lot on healthcare. Healthcare is this here. Okay, so that's not true for sure. This is housing. Okay, so let me use a different color here. So this is housing, right? This one is other. Okay, other, housing. This light blue one is transportation, and this is food. Okay. All right, let's see. Ipshita says the amount of money spent on food seems to be almost the same for both countries. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Okay. So we can tell that in Japan there is. So this is what I noticed. Let me show you how I look at this. You shouldn't need to look at percentages, okay? So in Japan, we have one big slice, another big slice, another big slice, and another big slice. And we have one kind of smaller slice. Okay? In Malaysia, we have, and this is where just simple visual logic, everyone. Simple visual logic. So in Malaysia, we have one big slice, a nice big slice. We have another big slice. We have another big slice. And then we have one tiny slice in here. And we have one kind of smaller slice here. Does everybody see that? So does everybody see what I see? Or am I kind of gone crazy? No, I hope not. Not yet. Not yet. It's early. Another 50 years. So does everybody see that? Japan has four kind of evenly distributed, even proportions, roughly or approximately large slices and one tinier slice. And then Malaysia has three kind of bigger slices and two kind of smaller slices. Everybody sees that? Yeah? All right. Gurpreet, what are you asking me? I can't see it. Let me try to see what you're asking me. Well, I can't see it, Gurpreet. You're going to have to ask the question again. Maybe Carolina can help you out with that. Okay, anyway, we see these slices. So that's my visual overview, right? That's my visual overview. So that's what I'm going to write about. Okay. Now, your overview is very important. Don't underestimate this because that will create clarity and structure in task one. And clarity and structure in task one is extremely important. Okay. So I would say at first glance, it is clear that Japanese spent significant amounts of money on housing, food, transportation, and other goods and services but spent little on healthcare. Comparably, Malaysians spent much on housing, food, and other goods and services, but less on transport and healthcare. Okay, so that would be my overview, all right? And then I would review it for accuracy and spelling. So at first glance, it is clear that the Japanese spent significant amounts of money on housing, food, transportation, and other goods and services, but spent little on healthcare. Comparably, Malaysians spent much on housing, food, and other goods and services, but less on transport and healthcare. Okay, and now that gives me clarity and a good outline. Okay, all right, good. So I'm ready to now go into my analysis. Let's see what you have. Okay, let's see what you've written. So Choose Lee. Choose Lee's overview looks like this. So Choose Lee writes, it is apparent from the pie chart that overall the percentage of money spent on housing is more in both Japan and Malaysia, whereas money spent on healthcare is less. That's not a bad start, Choose, for your overview. You definitely want to write a bit more. So you're only describing a part of these pie charts in this overview, but it's a good start. So also, both countries spent much on other goods and services. However, Japan spent significantly more on transport than Malaysia. Right? So, Choose, you need a bit more information to make that a complete overview. Okay? Jaspinder, VMK, let's see what you have. So you have to write a complete overview. Your overview should not be partial. Be careful. Okay? Jaspinder writes, overall, people of Japan. Jaspinder, we're too wordy. And the more accurate English is Japanese. Not spend. Oh, okay, spend. All right. So overall, the Japanese spend more money on housing, food, and transportation. However, individuals of Malaysia pay more for housing, food, and other services, but less on transport and healthcare. I don't think the however is accurate because it's not opposite. Both countries, they spend a lot on housing and food. Okay. So, however, is not the right way to join it. It's confusing, Jaspinder. You have to be careful about that. So, we would just write individuals of Malaysia also pay a lot of money for housing, food, and other services, but less. Now it's more accurate because of the but here. Okay, so it's a better comparison. Students, you have to be very, very, very careful with how you use those joining words, those linking words that show comparison and contrast, like but, however, similarly, likewise. Okay, be very, very careful. Data has to be accurate. If your essay is confusing, even if you have good English, good grammar, good vocabulary, but there's confusion for information in your essay, you will not get a score higher than a band 6. Okay, so for band 7, band 8, you can make some mistakes with grammar and spelling, but you cannot make mistakes with information. That's another very important tip. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, so information, or also known as coherence, mistakes will cost you more marks or band scores on the IELTS than a few spelling or grammar mistakes. Okay, everybody got that? Yes, thumbs up. So give me a sign, show me that you understand that, because that's very important. A lot of students focus a lot of energy on good grammar or good vocabulary, but then they make mistakes with information and they don't know why they're getting low scores. And it's, well, because the essay is confusing, right? Creative Edge, Yani, Harjat, thank you for those thumbs up. Anwar, Preston, Katarina, thank you. Yes, so information costs you marks. Be very careful about that, okay? Especially on the academic IELTS. Also the general, but especially on the academic, okay? All right, so after we've finished our overview, we can now do the body paragraph. A body paragraph is the analyses, 5 to 8 points that follow the structure of the overview. Okay. Mark them before you start writing them. So here, I kind of have that because notice how here, okay, so I talked about housing first, right? And I mentioned housing in Malaysia as well. And then food is second. Okay. Food is second here. And then I have transportation, and then I have others. And here I have others, and then I have transportation here, okay? So I'm going to focus on comparing and contrasting these two pie charts based on the order of information that I have in the overview, especially from Japan. Let me show you what I mean with the actual graph. So first of all, I'm going to compare housing. Okay. Now, housing is this green piece here. Okay. So that will be my number one comparison. Okay. And then after housing, I'm going to compare food. That will be my number two comparison. This is food. Okay. Then I'm going to compare transportation. That'll be my number three comparison. Then I will compare other. Why am I leaving other till number four? Well, because it's not so interesting, because we don't really know what those other goods and services are. We don't have that information. So it's not as interesting as knowing the other ones first. So that would be number four. And then the last one will be healthcare, which will be number 5. And that's because it's the least interesting. It's the least money spent by these citizens of these countries. So it's the least interesting, right? So I'm going to start with number 1. Okay, before I write the sentence for number 1, okay, you don't need to write to begin with, Harsh. Everybody begins with to begin with. You don't need to begin with. Don't be like the other 1 million IELTS candidates out there. If you keep copying templates off the internet and what other people do, like to begin with, they don't really get good marks, and you're just wasting your energy and time. The IELTS examiner will not give you any marks for writing to begin with. So careful with that. Let's use some good logic, some good English. So 21, what is that? How much is that? We don't want to just write the same numbers that we see in the graph. Again, Band 7, Band 8, Band 9 essays are all about interpretation, right? So interpreting that. How much is 21% of 100%? So of 100%, how much is 21? Chusli says it's a quarter, but it's not a quarter. Katarina is more accurate. Katarina says it's 1/5. Our Lachino says it's 1/5. Yeah, it's 1/5. Exactly. How much is 34% of 100? Roughly. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but roughly. How much is 34%? So this is 1/5, right? As we just said. How much is 34%? 1/3. Yeah. Okay. Now we can write a beautiful sentence that will get us a good band score. So let's do that. Okay. And that's housing. Okay, that's housing. Can we see that? Yes, we can. All right, good. So instead of saying to begin with, because that's kind of like, bah, everybody writes it. Okay, firstly, it's not a process. It's not like first, second, third, right? Somebody might write about others or transportation first. So there's no first, second, third here. What are we actually doing? We're giving more detail. So in more detail. Okay. Looking at the graphs in more detail. In more detail. Japanese budget, or let's say a fifth of Japanese budget is allocated to housing. However, in Malaysia, housing is 1/3 of the total spent. Okay. So this would be your band 9 level opening for your analysis. In more detail, a fifth of the Japanese budget. Budget, of course, is all of the money that a person, a company, a country has for spending. So a fifth of the Japanese budget is allocated. Allocated means given. It's just a more advanced vocabulary. Okay, learn new vocabulary in context as I'm teaching you. Okay, Creative Edge says expenditure. Yes, expenditure is a great word as well. Creative Edge, absolutely. So in more detail, a fifth of the Japanese budget is allocated to housing. However, in Malaysia, notice the use of commas here for the transition. Housing is 1/3 of the total spend. Lovely. Okay, now if somebody is drawing that pie chart for us, they can draw that 1/5 slice and that 1/3 slice, right? Dr. Makde is asking, why not say in more details? We usually don't count detail like that. We use it in some contexts, Makde, like give me more details. But we usually use detail in the singular form, not the plural form. So in more detail, it means deeper detail, not actually more details, but in deeper detail. Okay. All right. Harsh says, the percentage of housing in Japan was over 1/4. No, it wasn't, Harsh. It was just over a fifth. Over 1/4 would be 26%. While in Malaysia, it was over 1/3. I wouldn't do that, Harsh. I wouldn't say that Japan was over a fifth and Malaysia was over 1/3, because that 1% is negligible. Okay, so careful with that, students. Again, band 8, band 9, information accuracy becomes very important. You wouldn't emphasize that it's over a fifth or over 1/3 by 1%. In fact, in Malaysia, it's 0.7% over 1/3. So negligible. Don't do that. Okay. Okay, somebody's asking a good question. Prajapati is asking, why do we not write budget was allocated? Why am I not using the past tense here? So here I'm using the passive voice, but not the past tense. Why am I not using the past tense, students? Okay, why am I doing that? So why am I using the passive present and not the past tense? Why is that? Yeah, exactly, Chusli. We don't know the year of spending. Yeah, that's why I'm using the present passive tense instead of the past tense, because I don't know the year of spending. We don't see that. We don't know the exact date. It doesn't say 2015. It could be this year. It could be on average. We don't know, right? And we don't know really who is spending. I mean, it's the Japanese and the Malaysians, but we don't really know who is spending the money, okay? All right. Okay. Prajapati says, okay, that's cool. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so that's my first point. Now, again, task 1, it's like a recipe. If you know what you're doing, you're going to do just fine. Here, the next one is food. Okay, I'm comparing food. That's this one. I said I would compare that as the second. Okay. Malaysia, 27%. Japan, 24%. 3% difference. Do I stress about it? Not really. It's about a quarter, right? Roughly. Let's say. We're not doing rocket science here. We're not the Ministry of Finance and Economics in Japan, so we're not going to worry about the 3%. Of course, if you're an economist and you're working for the government, you're going to worry about like 0.02%, but this is the IELTS, okay? IELTS is not, they're not, this isn't your 5th year economics class in university. You don't need to really freak out if you do some rough estimations or rough approximations. This is a quarter, okay? This is a quarter. I'm going to call it a quarter. Shoot me for it. No, please don't. I'm going to call it a quarter. It's just an expression. So I'm going to call it a quarter. Okay. So Malaysia is slightly more than Japan, but it's roughly a quarter, right? So both countries spent roughly a quarter of their expenses on food. Slightly more, we can say, in Malaysia than Japan. Okay? Proportionally slightly more, because we don't actually know the true amount of money. Proportionally. I hope everybody understands that. The reason why, of course, is Japan is a much more expensive country with the Japanese yen than Malaysia. So they're probably spending a lot more money in Japan than Malaysia, but it's the proportions, the percentages that we're interested in here. Okay, so proportionally, they spent about the same. Okay, not the same amount. This is where, again, you have to be very careful with information. Everybody got that? So you have to be careful with saying, like, they spent the same amount of money. No, they didn't. Japan's way more expensive, so they're spending a lot more money. But proportionally or percentage-wise, they're spending the same in the budget. Okay, everybody got that? So you have to be very careful with how you analyze, okay? Academic IELTS, it's called the academic IELTS for a reason. It's not just academic IELTS because you're going to university. It's academic IELTS because it's testing academic logic, academic thinking, and task 1 especially is doing that. Your writing is doing that especially, okay? All right? Everybody clear on that? Yes? All right. Jaspreet says, yes, I'm clear on that. Okay. All right. So now we can go to the next one. Jaspinder says, looking at the great detail, the Japanese distribute their money on housing as 21%. Jaspinder, always use the symbol for percent, like the percent symbol. Don't actually write the word. And instead of 21, use 1/5. You always get more marks for interpretation. Okay? So the more you interpret, the higher your band scores. The more you just report, the lower your band scores. Okay? Keep that in mind. That's an important tip again, everybody. So this is a super tip. Wish I had the super tip. So the more accurately you interpret the charts, the higher your band score. The more you simply report, however, the more you simply report the charts, the lower your score. And that's true for university as well. Whenever you're giving a presentation or writing an essay on data, because what are we looking at here? We're looking at data. So the more that you're just reporting, like as we can, and it's boring, guys. So as we can see, Japan for housing is 21%. However, Malaysia is 34%. As we can see, Japan for transportation is 23%. However, Malaysia is 10%. In addition, as you will notice, money spent on others is 31% for Japanese and 30%. It's like, yes, we can see that. We don't need somebody to talk about it. We can look at that and see it. So believe me when I say this, when you're doing your engineering, economics, mathematics, and psychology, and lots of other classes in university, if you're just reporting graphs and charts, you will consistently get low grades. And your professors might say, your job is not to report it. We can see that. Your job is to interpret and compare. Okay, very important. All right, nobody wants to sit through a 30-minute presentation where somebody reads a whole bunch of numbers from the PowerPoint. Okay, all right. So that's what you're doing in your essay as well. You're interpreting. You're not reporting. Okay. All right, that's how you get high band scores. Okay. Okay. Shirojidin is saying, please speak about spelling mistakes. Shirojidin, you want good spelling in IELTS as you do in any other part of life. However, spelling is not super duper important as long as it doesn't make the writing confusing. Okay, if spelling mistakes make your writing confusing, it's a big problem. Okay, all right. So let's go on to the next one, which is transportation, because transportation is interesting for us, right? So here we have transportation for Japan at 20%. And here we have transportation for Malaysia, which is 10%. Okay. As we've discussed, 20% is a fifth. And we don't need to be a math genius. We can see that Malaysia is a tenth, right? 10%, 1/10. What's the difference? So how much more of the budget did the Japanese spend on transport? And how much less did Garam, I think you got it backwards. Garam Dorani, you have the right idea, but you have it backwards, so be really careful. Okay. Yeah, Sadikul, double. So Japanese spent twice as much, or double, right? And Malaysians spent half the proportion, or half the percentage, half as much of the budget, right? Not the money, because we'd probably, the money is a lot more in Japan, but the proportion, right? The amount. Okay. All right. That makes sense. So this is the interpretation part. So that's what we want to write. Okay. Transportation. Okay. So although the Japanese spend, not spent, because it's not past, right? It's present. It's general. Although the Japanese spend a fifth of their budget on transport, this is half the proportion in Malaysia at just 10%. Okay, and there you go. Now we have that interesting comparison, right? So although the Japanese spend a fifth of their budget on transport, this is half the proportion in Malaysia at just 10%. So Suraj, to make it more accurate, Japanese spend double the amount of budget, not money, because they spend probably a lot more than double the amount of money, but they spend double the amount of budget on transport. Gurpreet, it's not more than double the amount, it's exactly double the amount, 20% and 10%, right? Gurpreet Singh, not more than double, it's exactly. So Japanese spend exactly double the amount of expenses on transportation compared to Malaysia. Okay. All right. So exactly double. All right. Careful with that. Okay. Good job so far, everyone. So that's point number 3. Now we can move to point number 4, which is the other goods and services. Okay. So we've got our other goods and services, 29% for Japan, 26% for Malaysia. That's my 4th piece here. It's my 4th piece. Okay. So here I go. Number 4. And again, step by step, why do I have this pattern? Because I had it in my overview. Okay. So here, on other goods and services, both Japan and Malaysia, or both Japanese, both the Japanese and Malaysians and the Malaysians spend a considerable amount of their finances at uh, 29 and 26% respectively. Notice how I don't write percentages. This word respectively, it basically means that the 29% is the expense in Japan. Okay. Yep, here you can see it clearly. So it's Japan. Okay. And that 26% is Malaysia. It follows the same order. This word tells your reader that it's the same order. So spend considerable amounts on their finances, 29 and 26% respectively. Notice, students, how this is the first time that I'm actually using percentages in this essay, because I've done so much interpretation, right? So it's not overloaded with percent this, percent that, percent this, percent that. So I've saved that until this point. I haven't used any percents until this point. Okay. Yanni, you can use percents as a word, but use symbols. IELTS examiners don't like to see time and energy wasted on writing words when you can just use a symbol in task 1. Okay. You should use the symbol. Tenzin says, in addition, both Japanese and Malaysians spend almost similar on other goods and services, which is 29% and 26% respectively. Okay. Gurpreet, good. Tenzin, good. Just watch your word choice and unnecessary information, like both the country Japanese. Japanese are the people, not the country, Tenzin. Japan is the country. Okay. Students, one last point to go. It's healthcare. 5th point. What do we notice? It's a lot less. It's the smallest. It's the smallest piece of the budget, right? So it's by far the least amount in the budget. That's clear. What else do we notice? Okay. She says merely, yes, Creative Edge, absolutely. It's a tiny fraction of their expenses. I wouldn't say revenue, Creative Edge, because we don't know how much they put in the bank and so on, but it's a tiny fraction of the expenses. Okay. However, we do notice that it's twice the amount in Japan as in Malaysia, right? Okay. Sadiqul, to answer your question again, we don't know which year, so this is present tense. Okay. All right. So this is lastly. It's not last but not least. It is least. It's the least amount. Do not write last but not least. Last but not least, the least amount of money. What? It is least. So lastly. So just write lastly for this one. Okay. Or finally. All right. So it is the least. So sometimes students write last but not least. Isn't it the least though? It is the least. Okay, so lastly, let's see that word, that the tiny fraction. Lastly, the lowest or least amount of expenses, or least amount of expense for both countries, is healthcare. Is healthcare at 6% for Japan, which is double the proportion of Malaysia at 3%. And then I can do a little bit of a summary, but not as a separate paragraph. We used to teach people to do it as a separate paragraph, but for some strange reason, IELTS hates it, right? So we can do a little summary here, a one-sentence summary. One-sentence summary to show what we can learn from this. Okay? And what I've learned from this, okay, is that some of the expenses in Malaysia have similar significance or proportions to some expenses in Japan, while others are different, right? So ultimately, it can be seen that some significant expenses, such as housing, food, and others, are similar in Japan and are proportionally similar, right? In Japan and Malaysia. While other expenses, such as transport and healthcare, are different. There. And now I check my paragraph, okay? So here we go. In more detail, a fifth of the Japanese budget is allocated to housing. However, in Malaysia, housing is 1/3 of the total spent. Both countries spend roughly 1/4 of their expenses on food, proportionally slightly more in Malaysia than Japan. Although the Japanese spend 1/5 of their budget on transport, this is half the proportion in Malaysia at just 10%. On other goods and services, both the Japanese and Malaysians spend a considerable amount of their finances at 29% and 26% respectively. Lastly, the least amount of expense for both countries is healthcare at 6% for Japan, which is double the proportion of Malaysia at 3%. Ultimately, it can be seen that some significant expenses, such as housing, food, and others, are proportionally similar in Japan and Malaysia, while other expenses such as transport and healthcare are different. Okay, students, now at home, you want to review your whole essay, which at this point is exactly, without my instructions, about 220 words. Hey, no surprise there. That would be your band 9 word count. Okay, for this. There you go, right? Guram says the summary is something similar to the overview. It's not, though. My overview, Guram, if you read it, is quite different from my summary. Here's my overview. Okay. At first glance, it is clear that the Japanese spent significant amounts of money on housing, food, transports, and other goods and services, but spent little on healthcare. Comparably, Malaysians spend much on housing. And here we want to correct that as well, on housing, food, and other goods and services, but less on transport and healthcare. My summary is a bit different. Ultimately, it can be seen that some significant expenses are proportionally similar, but some are different. So I phrase it a little bit differently. For a band 9, Rabia, including this, you can think about it as a concluding sentence, is a very smart idea. We work with IELTS examiners and markers, and they say that they like to see not a separate summary. They don't like to see a separate conclusion or summary in task 1, but they definitely like to see a sentence that finishes the task 1 concept or essay. Okay, keep that in mind. Savleen, yes, 150 to 220 words for task 1. 150 is the minimum, and every examiner that we talk to says that it's very, very rare that they give a high mark for an essay that has exactly the minimum word requirement. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, good questions, everybody. And if you have more questions and you want to learn more about IELTS, definitely check us out at aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. Don't forget, students, so if you're curious, like, well, how does Adrian know that? Well, I can tell you. We are in close connection with IELTS. We work together with them. I know multiple people for many years who worked with IELTS or examiners. I myself work with British Council. I'm a British Council agent. We're IDP affiliates. We're British Council partners. We're a test registration center. We know. We know what's going on. So this is the general version for those looking for advice on Task 1 General. Students, click these big red buttons to join our premium IELTS packages, and we can help you more there. Get a good perspective, good understanding on what you need to get those high band scores instead of just getting all kinds of weird information from different places. Students, tomorrow I'm back with speaking part 2, speaking part 3. Sign up for the websites. We use the websites for speaking as well, and we talk to our viewers real time. Okay. Light Hall class on Sunday. Remember to join that. I will give you the link here. There you go. Boom. Join that. And keep studying, study hard, practice, review your essays, send your essays for editing, proofreading. You can do that on the website as well. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out from beautiful Victoria, and I look forward to seeing all of your beautiful brains tomorrow in class. Until then, have a great start to your weekend. I'm Adrian. Goodbye for now.